Welcome to She's Got Guts, where functional nutrition meets ancient wisdom to bring you grounded insights and practical tools for your wellness journey. Join Laura, licensed Eastern medicine practitioner and wellness wizard, and Molly, registered dietitian and gut health expert, as they unpack trends, tackle bloating, balance hormones, and help you thrive in modern womanhood without completely frickin' losing your mind. Let's do this. Today, we are talking about why your estrogen patch may not be working, why you're gaining weight even though you're doing everything right, and possibly what all of the systems in your body have to do with each other. Your gut, your hormones, your spleen, your stomach. And we're so excited.
Why am I taking the estrogen patch and it's not working? I think that's a big one.
A lot of times when we're in like this menopausal state, it's like there's this abdominal fat and we have a hard time losing weight and all of that. And it's just would be like cool to talk about one of those reasons why and be doing everything right and still feel like we're not seeing the results that we want.
Heck yeah.
The estrogen related microbiome is called the estrobolome. And it's a collection of gut bacteria and their genes that are capable of metabolizing, regulating, and then circulating estrogen, primarily because they produce beta-glucuronidase. The liver breaks down estrogen, sends it to the intestines. And if that microbiome, the estrobolome, is unbalanced, it can cause a weird recycling situation of the estrogen back into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
Beta-glucuronidase, what is it? It is enzyme. It is responsible to kind of break down and reactivate estrogen, and it does a lot of other things too. So it reactivates other hormones like thyroid hormones and like testosterone, cortisol. It has a big role that it plays in health because when we are eating carbohydrates or if we're taking a certain kind of drugs that is metabolized by that enzyme, then it can also really help to either effectively or ineffectively use the carbohydrates or use the medication. It can reactivate environmental toxins. So too much beta-glucuronidase in the gut causes reabsorption of things like pesticides, which we talked about recently, pollutants, mold. It's really important. Think about it like the ultimate recycler and what's the word I'm looking for?
Detoxification? Yeah.
Yes,
detoxing it
yes,
out. Yeah.
Detoxifier.
Or
yes.
eliminating it.
Eliminator. Drugs that it can be affected by are like NSAID medication, naproxen or ibuprofen, and chemotherapy. That's one of the reasons why gut health is important in overall, but especially with people who have cancer, because that can affect how well they absorb or use the drugs that they're getting in chemo, which I think is really interesting.
Wait, the beta-glucuronidase, having healthy levels of that is how you're able to absorb more of the drugs that people use for cancer? Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
So it can I think digestion absorption for food. So we could think breaking down and activating for drugs.
Wow. That's a spectrum. Chemo's a heavy hitter and ibuprofen's a little weakling. We're just going to do a little bit of inflammation taking down here. Oh my gosh. So this is so interesting. So let me make sure I understand from the big picture. So you've got estrogen in your body. It heads over to the liver at some point in time, correct? And then
heads over there.
Yes, it does, because that's what we do, especially if we have too much of it, right? It's going to go into the liver so that we can excrete it. But what's cool is I feel like this is another version of what we call these backup systems. Kind of like we talked about with was it the prostaglandins? When we talked about the prostaglandins, how that was backup.
Yeah.
That I feel like this is very similar to that. And that when you have the liver taking in this extra estrogen, which honestly is kind of a thing these days, especially for people who aren't in perimenopause, but maybe prior to that, or you're just experiencing a shift where it looks like it's higher because your progesterone is lower. But let's say you have too much of it, or it's just part of the normal process. It's heading over to the liver. Then it's dumping it what it can't use. It's rendering it inactive so that it can be taken out of the body for elimination, excretion, detoxification, all the fun words we just came up with. But then it's this estrobiome area, right? Produces this bacteria you just talked about, and they act like scissors. And so it goes in and it's I'm going to break down this estrogen again so that it can re-enter the bloodstream and allow it to be used again.
Exactly right.
Oh,
Good.
that's so interesting because if you have this backup system, it seems like it could really serve you or it could really not work well, especially if
Right.
you have too much estrogen or not enough estrogen, which is kind of
Correct.
what we're talking about right now. So, in the case of not enough estrogen, what is this going to do? So the bacteria is going to try to make up for that with a feedback loop of sorts and produce more glucuronidase so that we can break more down? Or does the liver get a message? I'm curious how this is all coming together.
It's like with the gut bacteria, essentially, the more microbiome diversity that you have, then the better your estrogen will be able to be regulated and either broken down or recirculated or eliminated.
Okay.
And when we look at how with beta glucuronidase, it's got to have enough of these kinds of bacteria and the genes have to be working correctly to excrete it. So if there's too much, but everything else is working well, you have that
Yeah.
diversity of bacteria, you have enough beta glucuronidase, everything's doing what it should, then it's going to get rid of it using phase 2 detoxification. And if you don't have enough, then the problem with low estrogen is it actually decreases your gut microbiome.
Right.
So
They're kind of,
it's
they feed
going
each other.
to a crappy gut microbiome stimulates the activity of beta glucuronidase and the recirculation of estrogen.
That's the backup. Like it sounds like that's the
Right.
mechanism of the backup is that the beta glucuronidase is there like waiting, kind of like playing defense. It's like how much estrogen is in the bloodstream right now and what do I need how do I need to like break it down so that we can put it back in the bloodstream, which I'm guessing is regulated by the HPA axis. I would imagine has a lot to do with how that goes down. And taking the pulse of what's in the bloodstream and we're using that system to regenerate that because that's our other main. It's funny because all the backup systems happen in that HPA axis. So when you do have this
Also gut
like
liver access for this one.
right,
So like the
yes.
gut, the liver, like how they're because estrogen is one of those things, like cholesterol, same thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, if you don't have enough, beta glucuronidase is like, I'm going to bring you some more. So it's going to break down as much as it can from the liver. But if it isn't getting as much from the liver to begin with,
Perimenopause, when you have a better and more rich and diverse gut bacteria, then you will have better regulation of estrogen. So
mhm,
it'll recycle what needs to be recycled and excrete what needs to be excreted. When the microbiome is doing less or less diverse, then we have
mhm.
more inflammation. We have slower metabolism. We are also, if we have, are you asking me about not enough estrogen?
Yeah, I mean,
If
that's
we
basic.
don't
That's
have
like,
enough,
uh-huh.
then we also have a crappy microbiome because estrogen itself kind of helps to maintain the richness and
Yes.
diversity of the gut microbiome.
Yes. It seems like they're kind of biphasic in that way, like they help each other.
Right. Yeah. So what's interesting for me is that when estrogen is present and healthy, like we have a good gut motility. Food, we eat it, it is transit the normal time. There's less time for beta glucuronidase to act. So it's not like when something gets stuck. I'm trying to think about like a sewing machine. Like
Mhm.
let's say the needle got stuck and it was just making one stitch over and over again.
Okay.
Um, when we don't have enough estrogen, that's kind of what's happening is that it's like, okay, recycle, excrete, recycle, excrete. But
Yes.
when beta glucuronidase only has that one stitch to make, then it's going to make it in the right place. Did that help?
Yeah. And it seems like beta glucuronidase, it is fed by the different strains of bacteria. So if we're going one level higher in order for the beta glucuronidase to kind of do its work, it needs to have this diverse bacteria. And I'm curious, I'm seeing here, I'm just in the AI overview that I'm looking at on Google right now, and it says I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them popping up, which is a lot of this
Bacteria. Yeah.
estrobolome
Oh, yeah. There's a
itself.
bunch of
Yeah.
them.
So
Yeah.
many. I'm like, holy bananas, it's
Yeah.
not just one.
But also, gut bacteria produce beta glucuronidase. So, again, if we don't have enough, then we can't recycle and we can't deconjugate and we can't
Mhm.
excrete. Also, the other thing is that in declining estrogen, like perimenopause, menopause, our gut motility slows. We have slower
Mhm.
transit. There's more time for beta glucuronidase to act. So, more estrogen is reactivated and recirculated. And
Yes.
then that's where we start to see estrogen dominance. We have to do more. We have to recirculate more. And it does tend, I think, to jack it back up from what I understand. It's a really kind
Yeah.
of complicated topic, but I thought it was
Yes.
worth a mention in a podcast because I think a lot of times we hear estrogen dominance. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times we hear that you're getting older and that's why your body is changing. And
Mhm.
so I think it's like interesting to throw out there that sometimes there are these like crazy things that we don't necessarily know about that are going on in our body. And so when
Yeah.
we don't have balanced gut bacteria, we have altered circulation of that estrogen. And when it's not circulating the way it's supposed to, that's where we start to see obesity, metabolic syndrome. So that's like increased weight, like abdominal fat and higher blood pressure and some insulin resistance. Maybe you're having some other issues like with cardiovascular, like high cholesterol. Then we've got endometriosis, PCOS, and even like brain fog. Those can
Mhm.
all be estrogen driven things that actually can be healed by healing your gut microbiome.
That is amazing. Yes, because
Isn't it?
your brain has so many receptors for estrogen up in there. It's like, give it to me, give it to me, give it to me.
And so, what I'm wondering is for you, what do you think a traditional Chinese medicine kind of angle
Uh huh.
on because you were talking about this before and I didn't understand the spleen and the gut bacteria or the
Hmm.
stomach and how they're related to traditional Chinese medicine and how we can also optimize those things
Right.
to make a change here?
Well, it's interesting now that we're kind of diving in here a little bit more. I'm realizing that this to me has a real strong connection with what I feel like traditional Chinese medicine helps so much with, which is systems. And when you see someone introduce estrogen in their body with like a twice a week patch, or maybe they're taking it orally or using a cream or something, that
Hmm.
this particular system really has to be engaged and, vibrant and full of these different bacteria and healthy
Hmm.
genes in order to make sure that it will go correctly and
Hmm.
not lead to all these things you just mentioned. But I often hear people that are like, "Oh, estrogen, it just like saved the day," right? Like that's all I needed. Well, maybe they had a really strong gut bacteria and they didn't need any
Yeah,
system support in order for that to work. So when
that's a
we look at
great point.
systems, yeah, exactly. Because I feel like a lot of people are out there, they're like, it didn't work for me. And it's like, well, what other systems did you need online in order for it to actually work properly? Because right now we're looking, and this is like 6 or 8 levels in to, we're deep down in the gut layer and watching stuff dump from the liver into the digestion. And this is a lot. Like this is a deep dive here. But when we back up and we're like, where would this be applicable in someone navigating perimenopause or hormones, is like, maybe you're introducing even like a birth control pill or something that could cause some trouble here.
Hmm.
Or even just progesterone, putting that on, throwing the estrogen levels off. And then this all has to kind of kick in order to work. But in Chinese medicine, we would look at, well, first we would look at what's the symptom picture, right? So when we see this, we would probably see people with fatigue and brain fog and the typical perimenopausal symptoms, maybe aching body, maybe digestive disturbances, maybe some constipation, maybe the opposite side, or diarrhea or something,
That's imbalanced gut
anxiety.
bacteria. When we
Yeah,
see
maybe.
imbalanced gut bacteria. Yep.
Yes,
Bloating,
yes. Bloating, yes.
gas.
Also, like anxiety, some skin
Oh, yeah.
troubles, the other things that kind of
Ooh.
just come along with perimenopause. So, we're looking at that
Mhm.
symptom picture. So, then for us, we would say, all right, when we're looking at this symptom picture, obviously, we recognize that in physiology, there's this pattern that we've talked about today. But in Chinese medicine, this is very liver overacting on the spleen. It's a pattern that we
Mhm.
would describe it. So, the liver overacting on the spleen is kind of what we would call like a pathogenic sort of relationship with the two. It has to do with how the elements flow and with each other when you cross
Mhm.
over like if you were to you have these 5 elements that make a circle, and if you were to take the one that's at 9 o'clock and draw a line over to the ones at 4 o'clock, it's going to quote unquote overact on it. It's just kind of a
I see.
conceptual way in which we see how the organs interrelate within each other. And
Mhm.
when we live a life that is lacking in sleep or having too much stress that isn't expressed in a way that's helpful, for example, like
Mhm.
we're not allowing ourselves to be in a flow, we're really resisting that stress and how it's coming. We also have digestive disturbances for sure. That's like kind of across the board. IBS is a big one for that. You'll see basically just not feeling like you're in your own body and in yourself. And then there's usually some sort of digestive stuff that goes along with it. So when we back up, one of the patterns that you can see when perimenopause is happening, or when there's even just that estrogen fluctuating, can be the liver overacting on the spleen.
Okay.
And then we would
And
choose a set of points, like how, what points would we use in order to stop the liver, or basically the, wood from overacting on earth. So we would do a series of points on the body and let them rest and reset the nervous system. And then we would usually give them a formula of sorts that also does that same action that they could take every day. And I like to pair it with different things. Like in this case, we would maybe look at what's going on with the gut bacteria. What would we want to do to support that?
right. And with that, then I feel like it sounds like the spleen is very much involved in how, like, if someone puts on a patch and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work for them, or, it makes things worse. A lot of people say, it's so much, oh, well, my hormones are imbalanced, is kind
Mm-hmm.
of the explanation that tends to get
Yeah.
thrown out there. So instead of saying that your hormones are imbalanced, what we're saying is that there is a break in the chain somewhere between the spleen, the liver, and the gut bacteria, and possibly all three, that is making it so that the estrogen is either being circulated too much, not circulated enough, excreted too much, not excreted enough. And there could be other things in there, like
And not contributing to the health of the gut, since they seem to be
right.
biphasic with each other. Yeah.
Well, like, are you eating a lot of hot plastic? Like, you microwave a lot of to-go containers, and that plastic is acting like estrogen in your body. Well, first of all, that's not going to be good for the gut either. You know what I mean? And
No.
if beta glucuronidase does reabsorb environmental toxins, then there's another piece in the chain.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah.
I think it's just important to have this conversation, because it's not just hormonal balance.
Yeah. That's so true. And hot plastic is the most hilarious term I've heard for getting exogenous estrogens from the world. Hot plastic.
Well,
So
plastic is fat
good.
soluble. So, like, if
It
you have
is.
it, if you microwave it and there's anything in there with any
Oh,
kind of fat, then it's going
yeah.
to. I also think about, like, that Graza olive oil that's like the most expensive olive oil. It's very trendy right now. It's in a fucking plastic bottle.
Yeah.
And those plastic bottles of oil are sitting on the ship over from China. They're
Right.
getting hot, and the oil is kind of so, like, I like an oil in a glass bottle.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For that company would have to be very, if they were focused on that, that would be clear in their marketing, that the plastic is rendered not warm ever in the process of shipping or production of.
Maybe it's like a special kind of plastic, but to someone like a silicone or whatever. But to someone like me,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, no,
No,
I,
no.
I would never.
Well, and outside of the part of perimenopause too that is coming to mind for me with this conversation is, even the idea of, I'm going to put in more of what hormone is missing and everything is going to be okay. That very
Hmm.
reductionist sort of thought that we've all been, not all, but that we can't really help but be trained by from growing up with Western medicine, going in and trying to find the one thing that's the fix when it's almost always a recipe. Kind of makes me
Right.
think too of like young women who are going through their birthing years, and they're maybe on some sort of oral estrogen or progesterone or something. Just because you put that in doesn't mean the system doesn't also require support in order for it to
Right.
work better. Like when you think about, then I think about people in perimenopause. It's like, well, just because you added in estrogen doesn't make it's everything great. Like, look how you were when you had estrogen. Was everything great then? No, it all comes down to your systems and making sure that they're able to
Right.
support that introduction of that new thing.
Right. Well, and that's why some people only use topical. Like, estrogen can be really helpful in preventing UTIs in older people, but a lot of times, if somebody's already 70 and they're just having these UTIs, they're just going to do a topical, because why
Or
mess
a
with the
or
whole
a
thing?
or a suppository would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you know
Very
they have
helpful.
rectal?
Yes.
Because there's less, like, discharge and maybe symptoms associated. I thought that
Mhm.
was so interesting. I just learned that today, actually.
Yeah. I've heard of it before. I've never used them myself, so I can't really speak too much to them other than it seems like
Hmm.
that hole that hole would hold things in a little better than the other one.
It never ceases to amaze me that someone can go to their doctor. Like I had a
Mhm.
client whose doctor said, "Oh, all your levels are fine. You don't need progesterone, but here's some estrogen." And I was like, can you
What
just go
is the
back
thought
and
process
ask
there?
like why?" Because
Yeah.
yeah. And just thinking about how there are so many amazing physicians out there and so many amazing like hormone experts and
Mhm.
practitioners who are prescribing hormones. I'm talking about like actual people who can prescribe. Um,
Yeah.
and then there are so many people who are like, yeah, whatever here. And it's not,
Mhm.
as we can see, the kind of thing that you can just be like, whatever here. But
Yeah.
I do think that if you're feeling bloated or you're feeling like you have gas and brain fog and fatigue or, whatever it
Mhm.
is, and you're not having an easy time managing your weight,
Mhm.
yes, there are a lot of components. There's a blood sugar component. There
Big
is
one.
a gut bacteria component for sure.
Mhm.
There's a hormonal component. And we also want to remember that, like, the gut lining itself.
Yeah.
So our intestinal cells are held together like this,
Mhm.
like two knuckles together. And they should pull apart a little bit to let nutrients and other things that our body needs pass in and out, like little yeasts and microbes. But if there's too big of a space, then things can leak out and cause inflammation. So just remembering that the older we are, the greater of a degree of increased intestinal permeability we have.
Mhm.
And intestinal permeability, when it goes wrong and there's too much, it's called leaky gut to the regular person. And it is starting to be recognized as a root cause in a lot of the journals. People are starting to look into it. They're starting to talk about it. And again, that can be caused by too much estrogen, too little estrogen. Like that's another cause of why
Mhm.
those things would start to go wrong. So I think it's
Yeah.
just very important to remember how deeply ingrained your gut is with your weight and also with your overall health.
Yeah, absolutely. And other factors, that kind of contribute to that leaky gut, just major stressful events can be a part of it. Hot plastic can be a part of it.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff, other toxins in your food and so on. Like
Hmm.
that's, I mean, even genetic stuff.
Glyphosate.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to our glyphosate episode. That was a good one.
And
So
also,
if
if your
we're kind of,
diet sucks and you're
yeah,
not eating enough fiber, like if
yep.
you're chronically constipated, if you don't drink enough water, if you're not like
Mhm.
excreting everything else that needs to be pooped and peed and sweated out,
Yeah, exactly. We love the excrete word today. And that's kind of what I was
we do.
thinking of. The one kind of takeaway today is just because you introduce one thing that has to do with hormones doesn't mean your systems don't need to be dialed in order to help that. And also, what's the one thing that we can quote unquote do if we
The
feel
one thing.
intuitively like we might have something like that going on that can be safe for most bodies and can be helpful. I mean, I think we all know sleep is a good one. That helps
Hmm.
us have time to make sure that we're healing and processing and allowing all that back end work to happen. But I think
Fiber.
that my dear Molly would say fiber. Yes,
I
exactly.
would. I was like, ooh, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. She'd say fiber, 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 which I think is safe. Go slow. Go slow with fiber.
Right. You might need
Find the
to
right
use
kind of
cooked.
fiber.
Right. You might need to use
Mhm.
cooked or soaked or soft. And as you increase fiber, increase water. It's
Mhm.
8 ounces of water for every 5 grams or cup or so. So just remembering that, we can't
Mhm.
go out there and eat three huge salads a day when we're not eating any and not drink any additional water because
Yeah.
that's not going to be good.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean just go out and grab Metamucil either.
Or a fiber gummy. What about
Yeah.
those?
Yeah. I don't know. I've never tried
Oh,
fiber
they're
gummies
horrible.
myself, but I would imagine
Okay.
that that's
Well,
kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do here. It's fancy.
it's
I
not the
feel like,
point.
yes. Yeah, it's the opposite. That's like the easy
It's
way
really
out that
not.
actually
Like
has
we're missing the
no,
plot.
yeah. Well, yeah. That's it. That's right. Oh,
Okay,
man.
well, that's it.
I love
See you
it.
next week.
That sounds great. Enjoy the day.
Thank you so much for listening. We offer personalized support to clients in many ways and would love to work with you. Reach out to Laura at Lala's Wellness and Molly at Women's Gut Health for more information. Unlock your full health and hormone potential with Super Cute, Boom Bomb, and Best Tea. Check out the link in the show notes for more. See you next Saturday.